great. And I can get to the point where I get so focused, I literally forget about time. I forget about the rest of the world. I'm just with my writing and my story. And I think that transmuted a certain skill with people, because I can be with people and totally forget that we're even in a public environment. And like, it's not that I forget, it's like it just doesn't matter anymore. And so I would agree, it is a form of love, because to me, that is the most powerful way you can really be with somebody, is to be fully with them 100%. And what a greater gift you could ever give somebody, or somebody could give you, to literally be there as fully as possible with you for at least a moment.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art.
All right, people, welcome to Way of the Artist podcast. Today, Evan and I are doing something a little bit strange, a little bit different. When we have guests on the podcast, we usually ask them questions at some point during the conversation. And we have this list of questions. And people have asked us many times, do you guys ever answer those questions? What would your answers be? You should do an episode where you guys answer those questions. We'd like to know what you think. And so we decided, you know what? It's come to that time. We shall now answer the questions. And I think this will be interesting. I honestly, I have no idea what I'm going to answer. I haven't thought about it at all. And even now, as I'm kind of remembering the questions, that my mind's scrambling a little, but I'm going to let that go and just try to answer in the moment and see what comes up. So yeah, that's what we're doing. We have these 7 questions or so that we always ask our guests. We're going to get into them ourselves. We're going to share a little bit of maybe our insights and thoughts on things and the way we perceive life and artistry and that. And yeah, so if this is your first episode, you've entered on a different one. But if this has been a show that you've been listening to for a while, we wanted to open up to you guys and actually check in with ourselves and just see, like, start of a new year. Let's get into it. So what do you got to say, Evan?
Yeah, no, I think you set that up very nicely, and I think, like, because this is something that's been cooking for a while, I guess, because it's been mentioned by a few people. So, but I haven't really given it too much thought. It's been in operation a little bit in the background. So, but for the most part, we're kind of, because we never tell our guests what these questions are. We usually like give them a heads up that, yeah, we've got these same questions, and we always ask our guests these same questions, like kind of at the end of the podcast. So I guess there's been a little bit of background, but everyone's always had to like just hear the question for the first time, and usually you hear people being like, "Oh God," it always works out. So how about, why don't we just first start off? Let's just list off what all the questions are, and then so everyone kind of knows where we're going with it. If you've never heard us, like heard the podcast with our guests where we ask them these questions. So maybe let's just start off by like listing out what all those questions are, and then we'll pick them off one by one.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So the first question, to my memory, is what book? Correct? It's what, yeah. I think we go book first. So it's what book has had what is the most important book you've ever read?
Good one, Evan. You got that out.
I know it took a while there. I was just like, because we word each one like a little bit differently. Yeah, how about that? Yeah, if you got them right in front of you, go for it.
Okay. So that's the first question. What's the most important book that you've ever read? Question 2, what film has had the greatest impact on you? Question 3, what's a song or album that takes you somewhere? Question 4, where do you think creativity comes from? Question 5, How do you find inspiration? Question 6, what's the one thing you would tell your childhood self? And question 7, what's the one thing your future self would tell you today? Okay.
Those are pretty
All
good
right.
questions, you know.
They're pretty good.
I
Yeah,
like these questions that we've sort of put together, you know, because like, you know, we're all about artistry, so we've got some stuff that has to do with you know, different types of art forms and mediums that people, you know, we commonly ingest and dive in a little bit deeper. I feel good about these questions.
Yeah, I feel good
Hearing them
about it
back
too.
again.
You know, by the way, for those of you out there, and if you're going on a date, or maybe you've just been with your partner for a while, these are great questions to ask your partner or the date that you're on.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things is something I learned very early on before we get into this is that, you know, it's actually something my dad said to me at one point, and I still believe it to be one of the most truthful statements I ever heard, which is that the greatest people ask the greatest questions. And I really think that's true, because questions are they are the pathway into the mind, into the psyche, into, you know, um, they can open up doors. So when you ask questions, try to ask questions that get people to think, that get people to look in, that get people to explore. Um, you know, I'll tell you something. Just as we start this podcast episode, I went on a date the other night, and it was really nice. But you know, at a certain point, we were just talking, and then they mentioned something about some exes. Sometimes that happens when you go on a date, and I said, "Well, why are you single?" And it opened up some really interesting, amazing conversation. And then she returned the question, "Why are you single?" And you know, and that got us into a whole new realm of connection. That just that question, and it's insightful because, you know, as you're, you know, entertaining dating somebody or just going on a date and getting to know someone, you know, if if we're such good catches, why are we single? And
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe that exposes why we're not, but maybe it also maybe it exposes how our values align, and you know, and that maybe our thoughts on partners and dating and things like that. So anyway,
Yeah.
as we open this up, I mean, we're doing this in the realm of, we kind of always do this under the filter of being an artist. But I've come to find that as we've done this podcast, Evan, artistry and life hold very they hold intimate hands, you know?
Oh yeah.
You know? And so
Yeah,
sometimes I
for
think
sure.
a lot of people, they think, "Oh, I'm not an artist. I'm not in the arts." It doesn't really matter. There's an art to life. And we do explore a little bit of the science, the kind of math, the practicality of life as well. But I think one of the interesting things to explore in all of this is like, what is the art? Where does this come from? You know, what's inside of you that frames or filters the way you look at the world? And sometimes looking at books and movies is a great way. Music, all of this stuff, and other things. So yeah. Well, hey man, I'm gonna give you the question first.
All right.
So question 1, Evan, are you ready?
Yeah. Let's do
Okay,
it.
let's do it. What's the most important book you've ever read?
So this is one of those ones that I'm like, I pretty like I'm like, yeah, this is a book that just, it always jumps to mind, and is one that I come back to, and I refer to it quite often. And I've read many, many fantastic books, and ones that I would sort of probably overcomplicate things by saying like, well, no, maybe that's the most, but no, like I the most important book I have ever read in my life is The Laws of Spirit by Dan Millman.
Hmm.
That's a book that at the time it came to me, which was in my early 20s, and just sort of how it ended up in my hands, it was one of those things that just like, it felt like it just felt like it was this sort of faded what's the word I'm looking for, just this coming together, you know. It was like this book and me just came together at a certain time, at a certain place, that was just like this was always going to happen. Like, and it was a book that really opened my eyes to an entirely different way of viewing life. Like it just opened the doors to a new understanding of myself, and about life, and it has sent me down a path. It opened up a path for me, essentially like an internal sort of journey that I didn't necessarily know that I was on, but it's definitely, it's a part of me. And it's a book that also, like, every single time I pick it up and read it again, because it's a short book, it's a very easy book to pick up and read, and I've bought copies of it in the past and given it to people, and I've always had like people be like, wow, this was a really terrific book, like, thank you so much. Like, I've never had anyone have a negative reaction to the book. But every time I pick it up and read it again, I get something new out of it. It's such a simple book in many ways. Like, it's not a hard book to read. It's not using incredibly complicated language or anything, but it's presenting very big and complicated ideas in a very accessible way, but it's packed at the same time, because there's like different parts of it that will suddenly jump out at you. Just like, oh, I never noticed this part of it before. There was always this part of it that I picked out of it, and now it's this thing that's speaking to me. So it's an extraordinary book. The Laws of Spirit, Dan Millman, most important book I've ever read, for sure. So I don't know if you have any comments, or do you want to counter with yours?
That's not the best.
Yeah.
No, I love that book. I really love it. I mean, you actually loaned that one to me, and it's one I've been meaning to get a copy of myself. If there's like a recommended reading list that I would give to people, that would be on the list. It's definitely a top book. I do love that you chose that one. It was very important to me as well. I mean, it's a great book. I guess the book for me that's probably the most important book for me. It's hard because I have a lot of books, and this is a really difficult question, and there's been so many different ways in which books have helped me. But I would say that Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill has probably been one of the most important books I've ever read, because what that book taught me was how powerful my focus and ability to create the world I want and the life I want is possible. And if I'm willing to do the work and just like literally just pick up this book, like, you can get it for so cheap. It's so available. There's been so many copies. Just go to used bookstore, you'll probably find it, and you can get it for just a few dollars. And if you buy it new, you can get paperback for like almost nothing. This is a must-read book for everybody out there. Like, honestly, will change your life. The thing is, Napoleon Hill went out and interviewed all these people, and he gathered all this information, then he put this book together. And I think when you're thinking about growing rich, it's not necessarily about money and finances. It's about being wealthy in life. And I've used some of the tools in that book, and they're like magic when I apply them. And I often ask myself, why don't you just focus on Think and Grow Rich? Like, whenever I'm struggling, why don't you just go back to that? It really has like kind of all the answers to every problem you really have on a very fundamental level. I think the reason why it's so powerful to me is because what Napoleon Hill, I think, figured out was how powerful our minds are, and how underused they are, and how we kind of overlook what we're capable of actually accessing in our life. And for me, when I was in not to get too much into detail, but like when I was in high school, like, I mean, teachers thought I was dumb. students, like other kids, kind of rejected me. I was a bit bullied. I was doing pretty well in sports and stuff. I had these things that were going for me, but like I think everybody just kind of like overlooked me. And I was just kind of like this outsider. And then when I kind of got out of high school, like right around near the end of high school, I started to kind of find my stride, but I was doing it kind of in private. And I think it was probably, early teens. Like I kind of graduated and I read this book and I just realized, like, man, you can be whoever you want to be, man. You are infinitely possible. And like, you just make a decision and you commit to it and you go for it and you can have whatever you want. And I went from being this kind of guy that was just super shy and like outsider and, and I went and I like, I figured out how to get into UBC, which was extremely difficult, especially for a student that had like low grades like me. I just went to college. I got A's in everything. I figured out how to be a smart student. I picked up books, started reading books. I just I just started talking to girls. I didn't care. Like I just said, I don't care if I'm scared. Just go and talk to this person. I just decided that I was going to be who I wanted to be. I got into an acting career. I booked roles on television and commercials. I did everything that no one ever thought I could do. And I attribute this book because you just put your mind towards something, man. And if you really commit to it, you could do anything. And, it actually inspires me to reread it again because I think it's one of those books that, like, it's just sitting there and so many people have never read it. And I think it's one of those things, just grab that book, read that book. It will do so much for you. And if you apply it, like, it is like magic. It really is like magic. And now I'm talking about, I need to reread it again.
And I'm embarrassed to say that I haven't read it. So I'm one of those people that, and I know you've mentioned it numerous times how great a book it is. And it is one of those books that so many people refer to. It's like it was a thing that started a whole kind of change in consciousness.
It really did, yeah.
To a large extent, and especially particularly in the Western world, right? It's like, and just some of the things that you were saying, it made me think of something I remember hearing from a video I saw of Sadhguru talking about, basically saying that, like, almost all of our mental distress, like mental illness or like common mental illness that we have in the world, he said, like, boils down to you're using your intelligence against you. You're using your intelligence against yourself. And, I haven't read the book, but from some of what you were saying, it's like, this is a book that teaches you how to use your intelligence to work for you, not against you. So I will definitely be keeping an eye out for a copy of that one so I can give it a read for myself, because it seems like it's probably a book that that would probably be very, very helpful. I think,
I think you'll appreciate it. It's one of those things. It's like, actually, one kind of coach I had for a little while, like, he read that book, I think, every week for a year. He read it like 50 times or something.
Oh, wow.
Over the course of a year. And he's super successful, and and it just it's one of those things. Just keep going back to a lot of the things in life, they come down to these very simple, basic principles. And if you build out from them, there's a lot more to do. But when we're not sound on very principle levels, and we undermine our ability to use our minds and use our, I've taken this book
ourselves
further, like Laws of Spirit to me is a great book, because it takes some of these principles you'll learn in Think and Grow Rich, and it just takes them even further in a way. Like, a lot of things you'll find are based on some of the principles you learned in Think and Grow Rich, because and it's not all about money. I think the other thing too is, I just want to, if people are going out to read this book, like, yeah, maybe it will help you make money. I mean, it helped me, but like, it doesn't have to be used for just that reason. Rich is not just money. It's wealth in relationships, wealth in personal growth, and in all sorts of things. So,
yeah,
spirituality, whatever it might be, but your mind is powerful, and probably being underused. And yeah, so this might help clarify. But I loved it.
Great. Well, let's just flip it around
Sure.
and especially I think that it's appropriate that you kick this one off. So Brandon, what film has had the greatest impact on you?
Mm. Ah, man, I love film. So, can I give you
That's where
10?
we both came. Like for anyone who's listening, like film is very much for both Brandon and myself, is really like sort of an initiator
Yeah.
to our sort of artistic careers. Like I always wanted to be an actor, and Brandon got into it being a filmmaker, and then got into acting, and that's how we met each other, was through acting. And then Brandon's done script writing. I've dabbled in some screenwriting too. I'm all right. But film is definitely a big part of our lives and where we come from. So, yeah, it's a big question for us, I guess.
It is. It's challenging. I mean, the thing with film for me is like my I've changed, and that's the thing about film is like at one point in your life, a certain film might be really important, and then another point, another film is really important to you. And but I would say that if I was gonna say the most impactful film, and I was just to like pick one out of the air, I think you probably know what I'm gonna say. I would have to say Fight Club because it was just it was such a it like rocked me. Like I walked out of that theater after I saw the movie and I was just like, what the hell just happened? Like I didn't even know if I liked it or not. Like I was just like, I mean, it was good, but it was like, what happened? And it wasn't for like another couple weeks until I started to realize. I remember I talked to my friend Steve about it, and he was like, "That movie was good, wasn't it?" I was like, "Yeah, it really was." And I just kind of and then after that, like I just remember being like, wow, like that was such a good movie. And I think the thing I love about that movie, without ruining it for anybody who hasn't seen it, um, is that this battle between the ego and our true self is such a it's such a battle that we have to face in life, and that movie was done so perfectly for me because it showed me there's this like ideal that I want to be. There's this thing that I'm trying to like, you know, live up to or something. And it might not have my best interests in mind. And then there's this real me who probably never feels like it matches up to that version of the ego, that version of, you know, what I should be or could be or whatever. And it's struggling with realizing why it matters and why it's valuable. And the as glamorous and glorious as the ego can kind of make you feel when you're like living in it and letting it run the show, it might be leading to your self-destruction. And so it's like so much of that movie is about this kind of self-destruction to like find yourself. And I suppose also in the time of my life, I think I was 16 when I saw it. And my parents had gone through a divorce. I had recently kind of lost my best friend because like he was kind of being, accepted into the cool group and I just wasn't cool enough, I guess. And we were kind of just drifting apart and it was really hard. And my parents had divorced and we had lost all our money. Like we were like millionaires and we'd lost everything. And my brothers had gone off. My one brother had gone off to the other side of the country to work. My other brother had gone to the island to go to university. And I was just kind of alone. And I was with my parents who were like fighting and just everything had changed. And I was just walking around for that time, just being like what is going on? Like this whole world that I thought I knew is just blown up. And then I see this movie where the beginning of the movie, his whole apartment is blown up. It's just and it's so it was so like here's life as you think it is, and then get rid of all that, and then here now you're in this world, and now what are you going to do, and what's that going to be? And every time I rewatch that movie, there's like another level of profound understanding I have in it. And I read the book too, which is a great book as well. Uh, but yeah, I have to say that's probably been the most impactful, because I think I think what it does is the one movie that actually talks about the ego death in
Mm-hmm.
a dramatized way. Like it's just like it brings you into an experience, and if you're open to it and you're willing to think about it, it's really really well done, well acted, well directed. Everything's great about it. But by the way, it bombed in the box office. It became a cult classic later. So there's also this kind of point of pride where I was one of the few people that recognized that it was genius before everyone else caught on. And I think I think I think I kind of love that. So anyway, I'll say that's
Yeah.
my movie.
No,
Yeah.
it's a terrific film. It was also ripped apart by many of the critics too at the time, and I still hear comments from people being, who slam it for certain things, and that make me go, I don't think you really understand what this movie is, because like I you hear sometimes people will say it's like, oh, it glorifies this kind of violent behavior. It and it's like, it really doesn't. Like, it really, like, how can you get to the end of that movie and think that it's saying like, hey, yeah, all this kind of behavior is totally okay, right? Like, for me, it's so much about repression and people so becoming so distant from themselves because of the culture and the society that we live in. And spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't seen it, so you should really see this movie. But I mean, like, by the end of the movie, like, this destructive element has to be destroyed itself, right? Like, it comes out because of this repression, and then it has to be destroyed because it is too destructive, right? Like, there's so much that's going on like you said, like, there's so much stuff going on in this story, and its messages, and it's a brilliant movie, a fantastically made film, from the script to the direction to the acting to the cinematography. Like, it's a phenomenal piece of work. They don't make them like that anymore. and there's nothing else like it. I can't think of another movie that I've ever seen that is like Fight Club. So, I'm not that you need my seal of approval on your pick, but
I sure
but
don't, Evan. But we could go on and on. I mean, we could do a whole probably episode just on that. And I mean, it's a really good movie. I mean, that's what I'll say. So let me turn it around to you, because I won't stop talking about that one. So yeah, what movie has had the greatest impact on you, Evan?
Oh man. Well, like, I always sort of go around and I tell people that my favorite movie is Almost Famous. And I'm going to stand by that, because it's just this movie. Because sometimes a favorite movie isn't necessarily the movie that's had the most impact on you, right? Like, it's definitely a movie that's had an impact on me. There's so much about it that speaks to me. And there's this sort of dreamlike escape quality because of the time and the era that it takes place in. And it's also incredible storytelling. There's incredible, beautiful messages to it and all of that stuff. But for some reason, it's not the movie that I'm going to say has had the greatest impact on me. And so this might seem like a little bit of an unoriginal pick for this, but the film that I feel has had the greatest impact on me is probably The Shawshank Redemption.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching this movie. I was, I never saw it in theater. I was too young, I think, to see it in theater. And it was just one of those movies that I hadn't seen. and a friend was just like, "You haven't seen The Shawshank Redemption?" And I was like in a, like a store, at the time when DVD sales, and there was no streaming platforms or anything like that. And so there was The Shawshank Redemption sitting on a shelf DVD for like $8 or something like that. And I had just gotten a DVD player like not long ago. I didn't have very many, and my friend was just like, "Just buy it." He was just like, "Just buy it right now." Like I'm not even concerned for a second. You just buy it and you watch it. So I bought it. I watched it that night by myself. And it just, like, I can't even necessarily rationalize it. I'm sure we could probably go into it and rationalize it, but there was just, by the end of that movie, it was just like the feeling that I had by the end of that movie was just like, I actually feel emotional about it right now. Like, I don't know why, but I'm just like, it's just like one of the most fucking beautiful, incredible stories that I've ever seen. And the way that it was made and put together, and again, like the acting and the direction, it's just incredible filmmaking, incredible storytelling. It's so human. It just reaches into your heart, and it tugs at everything, and it, which is so bizarre because it's a story about people in prison, and I'm like, I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about what that would be like, but there's something still that's just so relatable and that you can connect to. And it's just, I remember just being so exhilarated watching that movie, and especially as it gets into its third act, and I was just like, I remember like actually like gasping out loud at certain things. And I was just like, oh my God, like, just like, I was so like, it was just one of the most exhilarating movies I've ever watched. And it's exhilarating on every level that you can imagine. So, if Almost Famous is my favorite movie of all time, I mean, Shawshank is a close second to it. But as far as impact, I feel like it's a movie that it just pops into my mind as being like, I just remember so vividly the experience of the first time I saw that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. I mean, I remember, like, I'll just share this real quick. I remember I was at my friend's mom's place, and we were like 13, 14, somewhere around there. 13, I don't know. And his mom was like, "Yeah, you guys, it's a good movie. You should watch it." And we sat down and watched it. We were just like blown away. I still remember that day. I remember everything about that day. Like, it's sometimes movies just do that. They have this, like, especially when you go into a movie where you don't know what you're even getting into. Yeah. And then it just turns out to be something so much more than you even thought you were getting into. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, that's a great movie. It's a great selection. Oh, yeah. The
score as well. The score in that movie is just incredible. Anyhow. All right. Okay. Let's move on. Next question.
All right. So next question, this one begins with you, and it's probably good that it does. What's a song or an album that takes you somewhere?
Yeah, for me, this is like the trickiest one of all. Oh, man. Like, oof. I'm gonna, you know what? We always encourage our guests to do this. So I'm just going to go with like the things that just jump into my mind. For songs, because like I've got songs and albums both kind of just jumping in there. And there's two songs that come to mind. One is Bring It On Home by Led Zeppelin. There's just something about that song that just fucking winds me up. in the best possible way. It's just pure fire, and I don't mean that in like the, in the way that we say it's like that's fire. It's just like the song is just pure fire. Like it's that's the feeling that it just gives me when I hear it. And then in a weird sort of juxtaposition to that, The Scientist by Coldplay is just maybe one of the most absolutely beautiful songs that I can think of, to listen to. It's just an incredible song. And then this one kind of surprises me in a way, but there's an album by Neil Young called On the Beach. And front to back, like you just sit down and listen to that album from start to finish, and for me it feels like really taking a journey, like entering into the soul and mind of a person at a certain moment in their life. Like at this moment in time, it's like you just go into all of the life and what was going on with him at a certain moment. And there's just some incredible songs in there. And On the Beach is not one of the albums that Neil Young is most known for. I know a lot of people, because like that's an album that's not even in my generation. It's like that's my parents' generation. And I remember talking about this with my dad one time. It's like, oh yeah, his On the Beach album. And my dad just kind of like furrowing his brow a little bit, like, On the Beach. And I'm just like, yeah, like like that album came out like right when you were at the perfect sort of age for it. And it's just one of these ones that a lot of people don't know about from him, but it's incredible. Yeah, it's an incredible album. Beautiful, beautiful, soulful songwriting that really does just take you on a whole like you feel like you're just going through this journey, this story throughout it. So yeah, that's my answer. That's I know I gave a couple there, but I felt like I had to say all of them. So
music's a hard one for me. I mean, I love music, but I always blank when I'm thinking about like, oh, like what's that song or who's that artist or what's that album called? I can never remember, which always makes me a little bit like, I always find it hard when people ask me like, what kind of music do you like or what's your favorite songs or whatever. I'm just like, I don't know. I like a lot of different stuff. So for me, like, I'm very like, I'm not like someone who just listens to like one type of music. I like different things, different moods, different times in my life. So I'm going to mention a few, like 3 songs, I think that kind of stand out for me. And I mean, I would say number 1, if I was just going to have to pick one, the first one I would say was probably like Old Time of Rock and Roll by Bob Seger.
Awesome.
When I was a little kid, I used to put this, my parents had records. And we had that on record, and I used to put it on, and they had an awesome stereo system. And I used to put that song on the record, and I would just play it, and I would put it on again, and I'd put it on again, and I'd put it on, and I would just jump on the couches in the living room, rocking out to the song as a little kid. And I must have been like 7, 8 years old, just loving life. I'm just like, and it was such a like, it made me feel so fucking good. I just loved it. And my parents would be like, stop jumping on the couch. But I would just, the moment I could just take a break, I would just crank that song and jump. And like, in a way, like as mad as they would get at me, they couldn't be mad at me. This is like a little kid that's just like, it's infectious. You know what I mean? When you're that happy, just loving a song. Yeah. And it's so weird why I love that song. It's like, I kind of like, people used to say like, you're kind of an old soul because you're like listening to like some song that was like made before you were even really born, and you're just like, and I'm talking about like rock and roll, like it's like I was a part of that, which I wasn't, but like I think what I loved about that song was that I really felt like Bob Seger was talking about something that he loved, and and I don't know why I just connected with that so much as a kid. So like I would just I love that. There's a couple other songs I want to mention just because like I feel
Honorable
like
mentions.
yeah, honorable mentions, things that have made an impact. So the other one I'm going to say is this is probably a rare one where maybe not a lot of people have heard. The song is called Light by John Bryant. And I think it's a really beautiful song. It's a great guitar riff. The reason why this one stands out to me so much was because um, it was like summer, Vancouver. I went for this big walk around the city with a buddy, and he called it early. He called it early, like early enough. I just still wanted to like live. I was just having a great day. And I remember I came home and I turned on some music mix and this song came on and I was just laying in my like living room. The sun's coming through the window. And this song like just took me somewhere. It was just like so awesome. I was just like, and I love it when you just like hear a song and you just like everything in the world almost stops and the song seems to last forever. And it's probably only a few minutes of your life. But to me it felt like when I remember it, it's weird. I remember it like hours, but it was really only minutes. And so that song has to be mentioned just because it had that moment. And then there was a song that I heard recently, and I just want to kind of bring this one in too because I don't know if anybody's like just thinking of some songs to listen to. This one's called "Don't Look Back" by Kenny McLean, and this was like I was in Alberta this year, and it was kind of like right in the beginning of fall, and I was just I was just like big changes were happening, and I was moving, and I was figuring some things out, and this song came on the radio, and I remember hearing it as a kid, but I hadn't heard it in so long. And it was just like it's I the reason why I like it is because like when you like I've definitely looked back a lot in life and like, reminisced and thought about, oh, this and that and whatever and how things were and it's kind of like to me in that moment it was just kind of like you don't need to look back and like let those things be, you know? And it's kind of emotional, but at the same time it's like you're here now and you're moving forward. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And things are not when you remember them back in the day, sometimes I think that we can glorify the past and make it like into something it really wasn't. And this moment, like I think where I've come to, and since that song and like this moment I'm in now and where I've been moving forward, I'm just so grateful for the moment I'm in now. As weird as it's been and as as unexpected as these moments have been in this part of my journey, um, I don't know. It was a moment where I listened to that song and it gave me a bit of a reset and let me just kind of go like, because I really was enjoying the moment of listening to the song. And in a weird way, the song kind of, I don't know, it just spoke to me to kind of like, you know, quit revisiting. Like, let's take this moment, let's take these next moments and like, let's like live life, you know? And so I don't know why. I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to have that impact on everybody else, but those are my songs. It was hard for me to answer that one because like I had to like literally just quickly go into my Spotify and be like, okay, these are the songs, you know. Not that I planned on that, but those were probably the ones that kind of like really
Nice.
got me.
I definitely jotted some of that down. To take a look at. And definitely the Bob Seger. That's awesome. And as they say, rock and roll will never die. Right. And I remember actually a time when I was like 6 or 7 years old, I was really into Bob Seger. My folks had like a Bob Seger greatest hits cassette tape that I used to just listen to all the time. And yeah, old time rock and roll. Hollywood Nights and all that stuff. Bob Seger had some, man, he made some great music.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on. So, Brandon, where do you think creativity comes from? Hey, everybody, this is Evan, and this episode is brought to you by my book. Yes, I recently released a book called The Actor's Awakening, Connecting Spirituality to Craft. Expand yourself as an actor and your craft through a spiritual perspective. Take a journey that will explore universal philosophies and insights to help you understand human nature in a profound way and develop practices to take your work to another level. Again, that's The Actor's Awakening, Connecting Spirituality to Craft, available on Kindle and paperback on Amazon. And as always, if you like the show, please subscribe.
Who asked the question like that?
Who asks a question like that? What kind of assholes ask a question like that?
Well, where does creativity come from? Let me think for a second here. I really wanted to wait till the moment we got here before I really work these ones out. For me, creativity comes from being present and then picking on, like, letting one little inspiration hit me and then letting my imagination run with that. For me, it's so much about just, like, there's always like, for me, I would say there's always a prepared fire. Like, there's always this, like all the wood is placed, everything's always there, and it's just ready. It's ready to go. And all it takes is just an inspiration and some indulgence in that inspiration. And for me, creativity, once it ignites, it can take me to wild, crazy, awesome places. And it's just a matter of if I'm willing to indulge that inspirational spark when it hits. And I think they hit all the time. And it's just a matter of if I'm always like the principles of art and the way to explore these things and the way to even express these things, a lot of that stuff's built for me now. So that's why I say kind of the fire pit is built. But that fire pit doesn't burn until some moment sparks something. And I think the spark, I think there's tons of things. This is like infinitely, like, I could be sparked really at any moment. And I would also say, I want to mention one other thing, because I think it comes from not just a spark, but that spark becomes more accessible when I'm relaxed and at ease and at peace. And so for me, creativity comes from a place of, like, a relaxed, at ease, peaceful place, putting myself out into the world somehow. And when a spark hits, to let myself just run with that, just let that ignite something and then go with it. And it's amazing when it does. I think sometimes creativity feels a little more inaccessible to me when I let myself get stressed or anxious, or I just let life become overbearing. So I would say it's a combination of that. I think the spark is always out there, but it's about being in a place where you can actually feel like you can embrace that creative spark, and go with it. And I don't know how it works for everybody else, but for me, it's very much like my visual medium, like whatever, like, creates visualization for me, becomes very potent and very powerful. And like I can I can just be so entertained with my imagination. But I usually find that it just requires a little bit of spark somewhere. And sometimes that spark is almost like unrelated to the thing that I explore in my mind. But I like to find something outside of myself that isn't, like, just internally generated. And then the rest becomes internally generated. I feel like that combination of a little bit of the outside world combined with my internal world, that's where creativity really finds its legs for me. And I don't think that, like, I think I could be in a room, you could leave me there and I would still use my imagination. I don't think like I have to have that. But when I find inspiration and creativity, the creativity I think often comes from an external, some type of external thing, letting something enter me. Um, have it be a song or a moment or just seeing someone do something out in the world, sometimes watching a movie, anything, just something hits me and I go, okay, what could I do with that? And exploring that is where the creativity really comes for me. How about for you, Evan?
Oh
Where does
man. Yeah.
creativity come from?
Yeah. It's such an interesting question. Because like whenever we ask this question of people, there's this feeling, and now having to answer it for myself, but there's always this feeling with this question that it's both like it's right there, and it's also really far, like it's like where do you think creativity comes from is feels a little bit like, fistful of sand to a certain degree, because it's like, but I enjoy that aspect of it. I enjoy that it's almost a question that you have to kind of grapple with, and that I don't know if there's really a satisfactory answer to it, like that you could just come to just like, this is this is where creativity comes from. Boom, there you go. It's not like that. It's kind of shifty. But with that said, we talk a lot about creativity on this podcast. And, like that creativity is something that comes from the unknown, from venturing into this unknown space. Where does creativity come from? I don't know exactly, but I know that it comes. I know that it's everywhere. I know that creativity is inside of me. I know creativity is outside of me. That creation is happening all around me, and it's really, it's truly. I mean, I think everything that there is. Like I think we did a podcast on, what was that one called? Why it feels so good to get creative. I really enjoyed that one, and I think by the end of it, I came out with this thing of just like, well, it's what it is, man. Like it's the whole thing. Creativity is and creation is what this whole thing is what life is. So it's really a matter of, I think that where it comes from, is just like, well, it comes from everywhere. And really the question that we wrestle with and that I wrestle with is like, okay, so how do I tap into that? How do I access that creativity? Or is that something I even need to really worry about because it's just happening? I don't know. That's a whole other can of worms, but, where does creativity come from? I mean, it comes from everywhere. That seems like a bit of a cop-out answer when I say it out loud, but that's where I'm at with it.
Well, I mean, what I hear when you say that is that maybe we don't have to look so hard for it. Like maybe it's just about being open enough to seeing it, because I agree with that. I mean, there's times where, I mean, it just really, to me, it is everywhere, but it just depends on what matters to me or to you or to whoever's the creator of what they're doing, right? Like there's so like we're so abundantly full of creative options, but it's a matter of like what hits you? What do you care about? What do you want to explore creatively,
Well, what you're saying, what it brings in, and I'll maybe add this to the answer, but like in terms of a more sort of like, where does it come from? Like everywhere, I still stand by that, like, because it's it's always present. Creativity is always present. But in terms of how it manifests itself. Um, Attention.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
like it's like it comes from wherever we put our attention, right? That's where it will emerge, right? That's how
Mhm.
we tap into it is, well, what are you putting your attention on?
Yeah. And I think like for the artists out there who are looking for, looking to tap into their creativity, or just a person trying to looking to tap, yeah, like just look at like what you want to put attention on. It matters. I mean, that's you're the one that wants to do it. And like we'll all benefit if you want to share it with us, this thing that you put attention on, and maybe we don't know to put attention on to it, and maybe just the fact that you're willing to is what needs to create that art, or that medium, or that building. Who knows what you're creating, right? But because you're putting your attention on it, then we all see it after you show us, and so I think, something about this question that's coming up for me is like, yeah, like maybe with where does creativity come from, maybe it does come from everywhere, and maybe that's the thing, is maybe we need to honor our attention more on what we think matters and what we think we want to explore, and not looking outside for like what should I do or what's the right thing to do, but like what do you want to do, what do you care about, what matters to you, and maybe if you just explored that, you might find that the creativity that you're venturing into is something that really the world needs, because no one's putting attention on it but you, or no one can put attention on it the way you can and see it the way you can, and that's why it's so important, or hear it the way you can, whatever it might be, you know so um maybe just to, like, have a little confidence in the fact that you have a perception unlike anyone else's, you know
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what I'm getting from that.
All
All right,
right.
next question.
Next question.
All right, well, how do you find inspiration, Evan?
How do
I'd
I
like to
find?
know. How do you find it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely through conversation. Like, I think that's definitely a reason why we've been podcasting and we've kept on doing it for all of these years. Is that I find these conversations to be inspiring, and I regularly have them with you, but when I get to have them with other people, like it's I relish those opportunities as well. Like, I find inspiration in talking about what I'm passionate about with other people, talking about what they're passionate about, um, and connecting with people on that level is definitely a very big thing that inspires me. And also probably just like walks in nature. Walks in nature are probably also a by myself typically, are usually where I find it's usually how on a more practical level, I guess, how I find inspiration. Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
I mean,
Well,
it can come from other areas too, but I would say like those are two of the main ones that it comes from for me.
yeah, I would say for me, nature is a very important part of everything in my life. I've always just made time to go out into nature, no matter how much in the city I've been. Like I just, I remember one time I took a bunch of guys out hiking, and we're all out there, and they're like, man, I never make enough time. One of the guys was like, I never make enough time to do this. And then just like, man, you're missing out, especially being in BC. Like we have it at our doorstep. We can just go here anytime. And a lot of really good friendships that I built, like in my life, have just been by being like saying to people, hey, you want to go for a hike? And we just go out, and like, um, to me, nature is perfect. It there is no flaw in nature. In It has its weird kind of like responses, but everything is perfect in response. And it reminds me that everything that I do is perfect in response in nature. Like sometimes you see a tree growing out of the side of a mountain, and you're just like, yeah, but that's what you had to do, man. That's and it grows out sideways, and then it goes up to the sun, and it's like, um, and there's just all sorts of things about nature that I think are a great reminder for us, as far as like you know, that tree that growing out of the side of a mountain and it grows outward and then up is so beautiful, but it's beautiful in response to where it landed in life. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, inspiration is a little bit like I love character driven stories. And I think if I was to pair this back to story, like I want to tell the story of that tree, but like in a person, like how that person worked through what situation or life they were in and how they decided to find the sun. At some point they decided it's time to turn and go up, you know and I think it's a beautiful concept. So nature is big for me. I also found that, like, for me, inspiration comes a lot from, I like going to like a cafe or like some type of place where people are just hanging out, just being, usually in a relaxed atmosphere, talking with friends or just, you know, um, so to me, that's a really great place because I find people to be so inspiring when they're relaxed and in their element and they're not really putting anything on. So I it's not so much of the people watching, although I might do a little bit of that just out of like kind of fascination, but like it's just being in the livelihood of people in their element. And I think also, like, I would say, like, inspiration can come from getting involved in something that you care about can lead to more inspiration. So like I'm
Mm.
a big advocate of, if I'm curious about something, let's go down that road of curiosity and it will lead to inspiration. And if it doesn't, I'll go down a new road of curiosity. But I often find that you know what? Let me just boil it down, Evan. I think it comes from curiosity. I think inspiration comes from curiosity. At
Mm.
the end of the day, I think that's really where it is. If you're willing to look at a tree that's growing on the side of a mountain and see its lineage and be curious about how the hell did that happen, that's inspiration. If you're willing to look at somebody at a cafe, it's a mother taking care of her two kids and one of her kids is crying and how she's consoling them and what's happening, and you're curious about that, that can lead to inspiration, you know, and it can lead to
Yeah.
a whole life of creativity for you. So yeah, I think you just got to be willing to open your eyes and your ears and your senses to this world and be curious about those things and see where that takes you. And so inspiration to me has a lot to do with curiosity at the end of the day. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, curiosity and allowing yourself to explore that curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And, just listening to what you're saying is like, oh, yeah, this has a lot to do with attention as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like being curious, putting your attention on things like, oh, inspiration, creativity, that like it's like there's this common thread of attention.
Mm-hmm.
I just read, I don't know if I'm quoting this exactly right, but I'm pretty sure I'm getting the sentiment correctly. But it was something from one of my favorite philosophers, Krishnamurti, which is that attention, real true attention is actually love, is an act of love.
That's so true. That is so true. Something that, I mean, I feel like I'm being a
It
little
is really
egotistic.
true. Sorry, like I just like you just saying like that's true. It's like it is true. It is true. Like it's like yeah, that is true. Like attention is the most loving
Yeah.
thing that we can give anything is our attention.
I've had a few friends, um, girlfriends say to me before, like, you make me feel like I'm the only person in the world when we talk. And I really, like, that really is true. Like when I'm really talking to someone, to me, they are the only person in the world. They're the only person that exists. I think that was something that was encouraged to me through acting. And actually, I'll throw a tribute out to Matthew Harrison, who was an acting teacher of mine. Um, and he really helped me with that. But I remember him used to say this. He used to say this in acting. He's like, nothing you say matters. Everything they say is like everything. Like he used to
Mm-hmm.
say something in that sentiment. And so when I am with somebody, I really try to tune out the whole rest of the world, and it becomes all about just listening and connecting and being with that person. And people really do appreciate it when you really listen and you really try to, like, it's not even trying. It's just like, because it comes to a point where you're just being with them, but it's full attention. And I would also say that it's like a state. For me, it's also a state of focus. And I learned this through writing, where what I used to do was I used to actually go down to the cafe, um, to JJ Bean. Remember, we used to go to JJ Bean
Oh
on
yeah.
Main all the time? But I used to go down to JJ Bean, really busy corner. Everybody's bustling, getting their coffee. And I used to put myself right in the middle of everybody, and sometimes next to people who are having a really deep conversation. And I just test myself. Can I write and just be so focused on my writing that the rest of this world becomes like muted? And I could, and I developed that skill. And it was my focus state. And I can get to the point where I get so focused, I literally forget about time. I forget about the rest of the world. I'm just with my writing and my story. And I think that transmuted a certain skill with people, because I can be with people and totally forget that we're even in a public environment. And like, it's not that I forget, it's like it just doesn't matter anymore. And so I would agree, it is a form of love, because to me, that is the most powerful way you can really be with somebody, is to be fully with them 100%. And what a greater gift you could ever give somebody, or somebody could give you, to literally be there as fully as possible with you for at least a moment. So I really do think like love has a lot to do with that. And I mean, it's like, I think we get confused about love sometimes, just, well, I can go on this tangent if you'll indulge me. But love doesn't have to always be this like, I'm in love with this person, we're going to be together forever. It doesn't have to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Love can be in a moment where you can look at somebody and be like, I love this person right now. And it doesn't mean that you're going to walk away and you might never even see that person. But in that moment, you can really see that person to just like love their humanity. Because at the end of the day, the thing I've learned about love is like, we all kind of are each other. Like, we're all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in the human struggle. And as fucked up as someone might be, or as you might be, or whatever, we're just little kids in grown-up bodies trying to figure this shit out. And there are beautiful things in people, and they might not have the ability to demonstrate that all the time, but there are moments where you can see just real beauty in people, even if you don't really like love them as a person and you find it difficult to be around them. There's still these moments where you can just be like, you know what, deep down, you're a really beautiful person underneath all the ego, underneath all the bullshit. And if you can give people your full attention and focus for a moment, sometimes you get to see that. And I really think that is an act of love, because not everybody's going to be willing to give somebody that chance to show that deeper truth. And who knows? I mean, maybe by just giving that person that full attention, maybe you give them the chance to bring that out to the world, because maybe they just never felt safe or accepted like they could. Maybe that's a little idealistic and dreamy, but I think maybe it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's great, man. That's great. All
Are we
right.
on to the next question?
I think we are on to the next question. Is it me going first?
Yeah, it should be you, I
On
think.
this one? Okay.
Yeah, it is you.
So the next one, if memory serves me, is what would we tell her? What would I tell my childhood self?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, now it gets into the real nitty gritty, right? I think I would tell my childhood self to trust myself. I would say trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Trust your ideas. Trust the goodness of them. Trust the beauty of your ideas. Don't let what others are doing make you doubt yourself. Trust yourself. Yeah. That's what I would, I think what I would say.
Yeah. I'm sure we could all benefit from that.
Well, I mean, I think in many ways, like it's this, I think that's a big part of this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like in many ways, when I'm thinking about it, it's just like a lot of the things that we say here is like, yeah, trust yourself, trust your path, right?
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the wisdom of others, and we can't do it alone, but only you can know your path, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of thing. So there's that element of trust in there. So, but yeah, no, I think that's what I would, it would probably come down to.
Well, what would I tell my childhood self? Let's see.
I mean, I know that you always, and to a large degree, with a lot of the things that you say on the podcast, is through that lens, that filter of like, what would me as like a 16-year-old, really benefit from hearing, or something like that. And like, I know that that's something that helps you kind of frame certain things, but so in many ways, you're probably definitely talking to your younger childhood self in many occasions. But I guess to boil it all down, like what would it all come down to?
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why I like coach and stuff, because I really like I want people to know what's possible, because I know for me, like, had I not taken charge of certain things in my life, like it could have gone down could have been a really bad path. Like there was always the option to just be a victim. But I didn't choose that path, and I'm proud of that. As hard as things were at times. But I would say, like, be unapologetic about what it is you want to do, what it is you want to create, and who it is that you're becoming in this world. And I would say, like, don't do it like for anybody else but you. Don't do it to be liked. Don't do it to be loved. You're already liked. You're already loved. You already matter. And I don't know if my younger self could have heard this, but I would have done my absolute best to try to convince them that they mattered, because so much of my younger years, I just didn't think I mattered. I didn't think that it wasn't even about not being good enough. I just felt kind of like invisible in the world. And it wasn't until later in life that I realized I was having such a big impact on people, and that I was actually influencing their lives and their decisions and things like that. And, for better or for worse too, because I think, I would have, if I would have known I mattered as much as I did, I also would have been more mindful of certain things that I said or did, recognizing that my actions impacted people. And not to say that I would have been like, oh, I need to take care of everybody, because that's not what I would have done, but that I just would have been more precious with people, knowing that I actually mattered, because I thought I didn't matter. I think sometimes I did things that were sometimes careless, and I just didn't think that I didn't think anybody cared. I didn't think it mattered in their life. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized, oh, well, maybe that did have more of an impact on somebody than I realized. So like, if I knew that people cared more, if I knew that I mattered more, if I had kind of not been struggling with that so much, I think that I could have been a little bit better about how I went through the world and what I did, because so much of my life was trying to prove that I mattered. And it was like, it was silly because I did matter, and I just didn't know I mattered. And like, it was like a pointless pursuit, to try and matter. Like when you already matter, it's like, what are you trying to do? Like you're doing nothing. You're spinning your wheels, doing nothing. Like, so I would say, like, to my younger self, it's like, listen, you already matter. You matter so much more than you can even recognize. And whether you know it or not, people notice you when you're around. They notice what you do, they notice what you say. These things matter. So every word you say, every action you take, do it like it matters, because it actually does. And and you know, I think that I would have spent a little less time trying to matter, and I would have just gotten down to doing some of the stuff. And also, I would have been able to be a little bit better with the people that were around me, because I think there's something really kind of destructive about trying to matter to people, because it's like you don't believe that you matter to them when you actually do. You know what I mean? And man, I'll just say one other thing. I've been cleaning house and going through a bunch of old stuff, and like I pulled out some old letters that people have written me. And I was like, fuck, I couldn't even recognize that I mattered to this person so much. They write me these heartfelt letters, and like, I was just so like, I just had my insecurities and like lacked confidence, I suppose, in that, for whatever reasons, but like childhood reasons, maybe you're, maybe a bit ignored, whatever. But like, if I would have just heard that, if I could have just got that message early, it would have saved me so much, just so much bullshit. So like, if I was to tell my younger self or anybody out there, like, if you feel invisible right now, or you feel like you just don't matter, or like it does, I'm going to tell you something. You fucking matter so much. You have no idea. You can't even fathom how important it is that you're here. And I know that you might not be getting the response back or the recognition back or whatever, but like, your presence makes a massive impact in this world. And the sooner that you begin to accept that and you embrace that, the sooner you're going to start to see that you can apply yourself and make incredible movement in this world. And I think most of the time, I don't think I was alone in that struggle. I think a lot of people feel like they don't matter. And so they just think like what they do doesn't matter. And so they'll go home, they'll watch TV, they'll sit alone, they don't call anybody, don't do anything, they'll have a drink, they'll do these things, they'll maybe say something they shouldn't have said. And they do that because they don't think it matters. And the moment you start realizing this shit matters, you watch what you say, you watch what you do. These things become like important things. So if I could have learned that earlier, I could have just got on with some things instead of like bullshitting around thinking that things I was doing weren't mattering. And it would have just given me a lot more connectivity to everybody else too, which I think would have been important. So I would say that was probably the number one thing I would say to my childhood self. Like in a nutshell, you matter. This is why you need to know that. And this is what you need to do, knowing that. Yeah.
Some good stuff. Some good stuff to pass along, my friend.
I wanted it to come to me in the moment, Evan. And so
yeah. Yeah. Okay. And final question. What would your future self tell you now?
Well, my future self, let's see. I think that my future self would tell me, wow, I think my future self would tell me like, it's all going to work out. Like, where you are right now is perfect. And there's so many things that you had to learn to get to this point that you're in now. And where this is going to lead you and what's going to happen is is so awesome and so positive. So keep your head up and keep focusing on where, where you're going. Um, I think my future self would kind of like tell me to like, don't worry about the little things that seem to be challenging or not going right or not going to plan. That this is actually all a part of it. This is what you needed. This is what you're going to need to learn. And I think my future self would also remind me it's like, all great stories have valleys and pits that you have to walk through. And usually the story only gets good when you hit the pit, when you hit the valley. That's when the story is going to start getting good. So whenever you find yourself in a pit or a valley or some kind of low moment or challenging moment, remember that that's when you're going to learn. That's when the story is going to start getting good. That's when you're going to start changing and evolving. And these pits and these valleys, these challenging moments, they're the only reason why you will change. They're the only reason why you'll get through, to where you're meant to go. So just plan on it. I think my future self would say, just plan on it. You're going to go through some valleys and some pits, and there's more to come. There's a lot more to come, but they're not the end of the world. You're not going to be stuck there. They're all going to be temporary, and they're all going to be an opportunity to grow and learn and evolve. And so when they come, instead of fighting them or resisting them or getting upset about them, just embrace it and try to be like, hey, what's this for? And let's try and enjoy the challenge of working through this thing, because it's leading to a good thing. And I think that's what my future self would try to remind me of, because I think sometimes when I get into these pit moments, I just forget that. I think everybody does. I think we get into these moments that are just challenging and we're like, oh my God, why the hell this? And why is this happening? And what the hell's going on here? And if story has taught me anything, not just fictional, but like real life story has taught me anything, it's that these harder moments are usually the moments that lead to the best things. And, they always pass. So I think my future self would probably tell me something like that.
I feel like what's coming to me is something I think that's kind of similar, but just like a different language, I guess. And it's almost like my future self channeling Alan Watts, but I think my future self would say, remember, it's not serious. Yeah. It's like, it's not serious. You don't have to be so serious. Like, it's just like, it's not. None of it's serious. Yeah. And, it's like, as we're like asking this question, one thing that occurred to me is because we don't ask this question, but I think it's an interesting one as well. And so like, I guess this is almost like a bonus question, in some regards, but in terms of, there's a relationship that I see between this question I'm about to ask and the one that we've just been answering. But I thought, oh, well, what would our childhood selves tell us now? I think that's an interesting question as well, right? We're thinking like, oh, what would we tell our child? What our future self tell us now? It's kind of flowing in this only in one direction in a kind of way, right? It's always looking back, but it's like, well, what about your childhood self talking to you now, like in the future? And I was thinking about that, and I thought just like, I just thought my childhood self would tell me just like have fun, have more fun. And in a way, I'm like, oh yeah, my childhood self is telling me to have more fun. My future self is saying it's not serious. It's kind of like the same thing, right? In a different way. It's like, have fun. It's not serious, right? So yeah, I think that's sort of where I'm coming at with this. But I'm curious now, because I want to know for you, what would your childhood self tell you now, Brandon?
Yeah, my childhood
bonus round question.
My childhood self would probably say something similar. And I'd say like they'd probably tell me to be like to be more playful, and to you know, and to just go for it, you know? Like let's do these things, you know, like I think like my childhood self would probably be kind of enamored with the idea that I could go do the things that it wants to do or that I would have wanted to do back then. So my childhood self is like we can do this, so let's just go do it. Like let's not like be spontaneous, just like, you know, just go and like and do this thing you want to do. Like you can do it. Like the only thing stopping you now is like, you know, is just whatever kind of weird adult responsibility or some nonsense you think you have. Like I don't know if my younger self would be able to articulate it that way, but the sentiment would essentially be like you want to do this and you can do it. So you have no reason not to go do it. So go do it, you know? And and I think that weird way my little self would be a little motivator.
Yeah. It's like, but I don't
You know?
understand. Why can't we just do it?
Yeah.
Well, because we've got to, we've got to have this, and it's just like, but do we have to? Like,
Yeah,
why can't we
totally.
just go and do it? Well, I guess you got me there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's something good about that, you know, is to look at life without so much you know, you don't have to have it all figured out, you know? I think that's a good reminder because like when I was younger, I would go do things and I wouldn't have it all figured out. I really trusted that I would figure it out along the way. And so you know, I think moving forward from this episode, I would say, you know, maybe something even to take into this new year is just like just go for it and trust that the path will appear as you take the steps, and you'll get what you need along the way. You'll figure it out as you go. Um, there's no amount of planning and preparation that will ever make you feel ready. If you want it, do it. And you know, life is always, you know, you never really know. It's a reminder too. You never really know if you have tomorrow. You don't. So you might as well do it today. And I think that's something that I always try to remind myself of. So, you know, as we go through this conversation, yeah, that's something that I would say is an important reminder. Is like, yeah, but you know, I think it comes down to that, man. I really do think the law of play, you know, it's one that we talk about, but this whole idea of just have fun and be playful, like goof around a little bit, don't take it so seriously, you know. Um, I think it's so important, and I think it's just such an overlooked thing, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe some people, you know, they're good with it, but like it's one of those things I think for myself, I can definitely say it's like, yeah, like just go back to just have fun. Just play. Just don't worry about it. Don't take it so serious, you know? Um, and I know that's always helpful. Whenever I do it, it always works out really well. So it's just like, why don't you just do that as like your thing, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Beer?
man, yeah, let's wrap this one up. I'm drinking today the Half Moon Pale Ale from Batch 44 Brewery in Seashelt, BC. Just a short jaunt away from my home, and it's great stuff. They make fantastic beer over there at Batch 44, and yeah, nice, easy drinking, but sort of just great flavor. You know, that's nothing too crazy, but it still gives you something. It gives the taste buds a little something. So that's what I'm enjoying for this conversation. Brandon, what have you got?
Nice. I think we must have had this. I mean, we probably both had this one at some point. This is Steamworks Pale Ale, and it's such a good beer, man. It just goes down so easy. I'm like, partway through this podcast, I was like, "Am I going to run out of beer?" Like, I was like, "It's going through it quick here." No, it's a good beer. I'm always kind of delightfully surprised by that beer, the pale ale that they have. It's just a solid one.
Steamworks, you know, they do some great beer, and they are one of the like original craft brewers in Vancouver. You know, before craft beer was like a big thing, they were doing it.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah.
All right, well let's just close off with some final thoughts about, maybe any insights that we might have had out of this one and call it a day.
Yeah, I mean, this was a lot of fun. It was I really enjoyed going through these questions and putting ourselves through the rigmarole that we put our guests through in these discussions. It really opened up a lot of things that I didn't expect. It went a little bit deeper than I thought it was going to go, and so that's always a really nice surprise. And for me, coming out of this one is I'm just always so stunned at every single time I am shown just how huge attention is. Like, just how much attention is like everything. Like, I've been saying for a long time, Brandon, I've been saying for a long time, attention is magic. Like, it's one of the most incredible magic tricks that we have. But it's like, it's just it's always so baffling to me when I discover just how much more magic it is than I realized. Like, today it was like, whoa, like, attention is creativity. Attention is inspiration. Attention is the greatest, is basically love. It's the most loving thing that you can do. And that really resonated for me, like, because it's interesting, because I read this thing a little while ago, and I don't think I really considered it. I didn't really actually pay attention to it. I sort of was like, oh yeah, like, just kind of surface level, but then just in opening it up as part of the conversation, just being like, wow, no, like, because attention is really, in so many regards, the only thing that we have to give. Truly. In so many regards, like, it's the fundamental thing that we give is our attention. And therefore it's like our most important currency. And whatever we put our attention to is really, in essence, like what we're putting our love into. What are we putting our love onto? Where are we? And so it's even bigger than I thought before, and I already thought it was big. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I'm walking away with in this one, is just how much attention is more of this equation of life, not equation, but how much more it is of this life that we have. And I have I suspect it has a lot to do with Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, as you were mentioning, as your the most important book you've ever read. So I'm definitely going to look for a copy of that, because I feel like that's something I want to put my attention into right now. And it's just interesting thinking about your attention as love, and like, what are you going to put your love into? What your attention, your love, almost as a synonymous thing. So I'm just rambling now at this point. So that's I'll leave it there. Brandon, what sticks out for you?
Well, I'll say I agree with you. I mean, I think that was one of the big things, that the big takeaways from this talk is we do come back to this idea of attention, but there was some interesting insights that came out of attention and why it's important, and how it serves us. And it makes me think a little bit about how we split our attention a lot, and how it's so easy to do that, where we're kind of not present, we're thinking about other things, we're not really there. And I think attention is magic. Well, it can be magic, and you can actually dilute it quite a bit if you're not really recognizing how powerful it can be used. And actually, yeah, now you mention it, Think and Grow Rich is a lot about attention. It's a lot about putting your attention in the right way for you, and just being mindful about how you're using it. Because when you do it when you do it in a way where it's like aligned, great things happen, and it is magical. You feel like you're doing a magic trick when you apply what Think and Grow Rich kind of suggests. And it's extremely powerful. It's an extremely powerful thing. So I think what I'm kind of recognizing too is maybe we don't realize how much our attention actually matters, and why it's so important to give it fully to things at times, and to not let it get so diluted. I suppose the other kind of takeaway that I would have is kind of like, I mean, I guess I'll just reiterate kind of what we came to at the end, but it's like, I think being a little bit playful and having more fun and not taking things so serious in life is just such an important thing to try to embrace as an adult, because I just think it just gets really hard to do, because life has these ways of sucking you into a bunch of bullshit, you know? And yeah, so I mean, like, I'm gonna probably be more mindful about my attention moving forward, but I'm also gonna be mindful about just how I can just be more playful and have more fun and relax, and you know, and just let that part of me kind of dominate more in my life. And maybe like instead of looking to, maybe even looking to my future self for the answers, is like looking to my younger self, because I think in some ways my younger self actually had a lot of the answers. You know, when I think about that little kid just jumping on the couch listening to like old time rock and roll by Bob Seger, and I'm just like, man, you had it right. That's how life should be, man. You should be bouncing off the walls, listen to a song you love, and just being like, fuck it, I don't care. I'm just like, and how infectious it was when I was a little kid, how everybody just kind of like wanted to play along and laugh along with me, because like, how can you be pissed off at a kid that's just so happy? You know what I mean? Like, you have to be a real fucker to not be happy about that. And I mean, I know that there's a certain amount of like, don't be careless, you know, don't break people's stuff, don't do any of that. But like, you know, I think like kind of bringing that sense of myself. I mean, I know it's still in there. I just don't think it gets the stage as much as maybe it should. So I think walking away, I'm gonna look at that, maybe how I can just kind of indulge in that a little bit more, because I think there's a lot of answers in that idea.
Thank you for listening in on our conversation today. We hope you found something helpful that you can carry forward with you. Head over to our website, wayoftheartist.com, for more free exclusive material and learn about the show. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to the show, sharing it with people you know, and keeping compassionate, creative conversation going.